Welcome, everyone. My name is Anna Eleanor Fierst, and I'm the board chair at the Eleanor Roosevelt Center at Val-Kill. Before we begin with today's program, I want to thank our partners, the Dutchess County Commission on Human Rights, the New York State Division of Human Rights, and my colleagues at the Eleanor Roosevelt Center for putting together this amazing three-part series titled A Focus on Human Rights. The aim of this series is to analyze the evolution and continued advancement of human rights work in New York State. Last week, we hosted our first webinar titled Human Rights, Past to Present, the Living Legacy of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, where I was joined by Professor Jessica Neuwirth from Hunter College in a fireside chat exploring the legacy and impact of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a historic document championed by Eleanor Roosevelt. If you missed that discussion, you can find the recording at the Eleanor Roosevelt Center's website, and we will also share the link in the chat. For today's webinar, titled Human Rights in Action, How the New York State Division of Human Rights Protects You, we have two panelists representing the New York State Division of Human Rights, Marky Bledsoe Grant and Kelly Ezike Saha. But before I introduce them, we are going to play a short video that highlights some of the history and context about Eleanor Roosevelt and her role in the creation of the UDHR. The UDHR is the guiding set of statutes that influence the establishment of the New York State human rights laws, as they both uphold fundamental protections against discrimination. So now for the video.
What are human rights? Are those rights the same everywhere? For everyone? For generations, we struggled with these questions. Then Eleanor Roosevelt and the United Nations set out to answer them.
Recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world.
As we emerged from World War II, a conflict that killed tens of millions and left millions more with nowhere to go, Eleanor Roosevelt became chairperson of the newly formed United Nations Commission on Human Rights. We won the war, she said. Now we need to work to win the peace.
Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security.
She saw the possibility for international standards for human rights in the post-war world, but also the need to act quickly as Cold War tensions grew between the United States and Soviet Union.
Everyone has the right to freedom of thought and religion.
18 countries took part in the first Commission on Human Rights. They sent experts on law, legislation, religion, and philosophy who asked questions like, what are human rights? What is personhood? And what comes first, the rights of the individual or the interest of the community?
Everyone has the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty.
With so many different backgrounds and beliefs in the room, finding common ground proved difficult. Eleanor Roosevelt needed all of her diplomatic skill to keep the group making progress. Meeting after meeting, for over 2 years, they hammered out 7 drafts of the new document. And like any good diplomat, she knew that often the toughest problems get resolved outside the room.
Everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression.
When the United Nations General Assembly voted on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in December 1948, not a single nation opposed it. The room applauded Eleanor Roosevelt, who smiled while she famously continued her knitting.
Everyone has the right to peaceful assembly.
Since the Declaration passed, critics have argued that it's idealistic because it's non-binding, that it forces Western ideas on the world as a new form of colonialism, and that the great powers manipulate it for purposes of propaganda, all while repression of freedoms and atrocities still make the news.
Everyone has the right to seek asylum from persecution.
But the Declaration has profoundly impacted human rights worldwide, influencing the language of national constitutions, laws, and more than 70 human rights treaties. Eleanor Roosevelt called it a living document, part of an ongoing effort throughout our lives and the lives of our children to improve human rights.
Everyone has the right to education.
It's through our own education that each generation can answer the question, what are human rights? And continue to advance them for everyone. As Eleanor Roosevelt said, we have to decide whether it's worth the effort, and that requires character and courage and conviction.
Fitting that here tonight should be the person who's been the leader in this movement, assisted though she has been by many others, the person who was raised to even greater honour, so great a name. I refer, of course, to Mrs. Roosevelt, the delegate of the United States.
I hope that video grounded us and reminded us of the importance of upholding human rights, not just internationally, but also locally, as Eleanor would want us. A message that we will highlight during today's webinar. Now, please allow me to introduce today's presenters. Marky Bledsoe Grant is an esteemed figure in the field of social justice and conflict resolution. As the Assistant Director of the Hate and Bias Prevention Unit at the NYS Division of Human Rights, she spearheads the youth initiatives committed to empowering young adults ages 12 through 26 through impactful programming that fosters leadership, awareness, and action. By engaging youth in open dialogue, structured initiatives, and community-focused efforts, HBPU provides essential tools and opportunities for young leaders to combat hate and bias in their communities. Markey holds a BA in Forensic Psychology and Dispute Resolution certification from CUNY John Jay College of Criminal Justice and a master's in social work from New York University. Her background as a social worker, coupled with her experience in restorative and transformative justice practices, underscores her deep commitment to fostering healing and reconciliation in communities affected by hate, bias, and discrimination. She has expanded her work as a DEI consultant, supporting organizational systems and structures globally by facilitating transformative dialogues through diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice DEIJ work, a comprehensive approach to creating equitable and just environments, which has earned her national recognition. Beyond accolades, Markey's mission is deeply rooted in advocating for social justice and community. Through statewide initiatives, she actively supports young people in becoming powerful advocates for inclusion and positive social change. Kelly Ezike-Sea is the Senior Director of Legislative and External Affairs at New York State's Division of Human Rights. At DHR, Kelly supports the Legislative and External Affairs team in implementing policies and procedures to expand the division's reach and disseminate critical information to protected communities. She is the division's focal point for local human rights commissions and works with them to engage and inform the public of their rights under the NYS human rights law. Prior to joining DHR, Kelly worked at the New York City Mayor's Office of Asylum Seeker Operations and led the office's advocacy and policy portfolio to support and address the needs of new immigrants arriving in New York City. She also has experience working with nonprofits. During her tenure at UNICEF USA, she helped implement the organization's domestic migration portfolio by supporting municipalities expand social services to address the needs of newly arrived immigrant families and their children. Kelly has vast experience in engaging stakeholders at the international and national levels. She has facilitated capacity building workshops with peace building and advocates in Armenia, Colombia, Jordan, Nepal, and Ukraine. Kelly holds an MA in International Affairs from CUNY's Brooklyn College and currently resides in Queens, New York. Both of them will be providing an overview of the New York State's human rights law, which was established in 1945 and became the nation's first state-level anti-discrimination statute, and they will also speak to how the New York State Division of Human Rights upholds and enforces this law. They will also highlight the Hate and Bias Prevention Unit, HBPU, which is a governor's initiative within the Division of Human Rights aimed at helping communities combat prejudice and discrimination and reduce hate and bias through a unique focus on prevention and community engagement. After their presentation, we'll have time for Q&A, so please ask your questions using the chat feature. And with that, I'm now going to hand it over to Kelly to get us started.
Thank you so much, Anna. I also, once again, want to thank the Dutchess County Commission of Human Rights and the Eleanor Roosevelt Center at Val-Kill for giving us the opportunity to collaborate and present in today's webinar. As Anna mentioned, my name is Kelly Izikesea, and I am the Senior Director of the Legislative and External Affairs team at the New York State Division of Human Rights. And I'm going to talk a bit about how the division is working to uphold New York State's human rights law. So today, I want to just make sure to reiterate that the New York State Division of Human Rights, we work to protect all New Yorkers from discrimination, hate, and bias. And before we dive into some of the work that we're doing there, I want to share a bit about our commissioner at the division, Denise Miranda. Commissioner Miranda, she has led the division since March 2024, and she brings with her decades of experience in public service and social justice work. And during her time in the division, the commissioner has really led crucial agency modernization initiatives, which have resulted in a more powerful and bolder agency that is ready to stand up for the rights of all New Yorkers, especially at a time where this mission is more important than ever. And today we are excited to engage with community partners around the state to advance that mission. So I hope you do find today's presentation informative. So let's start with the basics. So the division is a state agency responsible for enforcing the New York State human rights law. Every year at the division, we investigate thousands of discrimination complaints, and many of them result in remedies for people whose rights are violated. And I'll go over some of what the remedies are a little bit later in our presentation. So right now, as I said, and I mentioned, it is a crucial time for the Division of Human Rights and New York State in general. Many communities are feeling under attack. We are seeing long-standing civil rights protections being rolled back across the country. And so if you do take one thing away from this presentation is that no matter what is happening at the federal level, you still have rights in New York State, and the division is here to help you uphold those rights and feel protected. Under Governor Kathy Hochul's leadership, New York State is investing more than ever to protect the rights of all New Yorkers. Since taking office, the governor has doubled the division's funding. And with that, and with those investments, we have made major upgrades across every aspect of our work. So some of the things that we have invested in, we've launched a new dedicated intake unit, a new and improved online reporting form, a new call center to provide live assistance in any language when you need to report discrimination, dozens of new investigators, and other crucial staff members to help review and solve cases. And I want to get more into some of the specifics about how the New York State human rights law works. So I'll start by talking about the areas of jurisdiction. So when we talk about jurisdiction, we're really referring to where the law applies. So for the New York State human rights law, the law makes discrimination illegal in specific settings. So these are what jurisdictions are, which many of us encounter on our day-to-day basis. So most of the common jurisdictions are employment, housing, education, and places of public accommodation. And I know some of these sound self-explanatory, but I do want to elaborate on each very briefly. So first, it's important to know that under the employment jurisdiction, the human right law covers all employers in the state, regardless of the size. The law also applies during the application and hiring process. It applies on the job, and it also applies in the terms, conditions, and privileges of employment, including decisions around termination. In housing, the law applies to anyone who sells, rents, leases housing, and this includes owners, tenants, subtenants, agent brokers, and so on. There are limited exceptions, like in certain units where the owner also occupies the residence. In the education jurisdiction, the law applies to almost every single educational setting in the state. That includes public schools, charter schools, colleges, universities, preschools, and others. And last but not least, in places of public accommodation, they must ensure equal access to goods, services, and facilities on the basis of protected class. And I'll go over what a protected class is. So most of these establishments are establishments that are open to the public. So some examples are hotels, restaurants, diners, retail stores, hospitals, including state and local government offices as well. And so now going a little bit over what is protected characteristics. So when we talked about jurisdiction, that is where the law protects people, so the setting. Protected characteristic is who the law protects. So for the Division of Human Rights, to investigate a complaint of discrimination, the incident needs to have taken place in one of the settings, such as the jurisdiction, where we have jurisdiction over. And then the alleged discrimination also needs to have been based on a protected characteristic. So things like a person's race, age, ethnicity, or disability. And so under the New York State human rights law, we have 19 different protected characteristics, which you can see listed in this slide. And you can also learn more about them in our website at dhr.ny.gov. So we do like to say that if you are a New Yorker, you fit at least one of these protected characteristics. And that just goes to show that the human right law in New York State protects everyone. So now that we covered a little bit about how the law works, I want to talk about how you can report discrimination to us and then what happens after you report discrimination. So the easiest way to report discrimination to the division is through our call center at 844 NYS DHR1. So that's 844-697-3471. And we're also putting that information in the chat. We have trained agents who are able to provide real-time assistance when you call us. They will listen to what happened and file a report on the caller's behalf. We also have an online form that you can fill out yourself, and that's also available on our website at dhr.ny.gov. And I do want to emphasize this is that reporting discrimination to the Division of Human Rights, it's free. There is no charge associated with it, and you do not need an attorney to submit a report. Now, when you file a discrimination report with the division, the first thing that happens is that our intake unit reviews it. So they make sure that the report is complete and is within our jurisdiction. Once these conditions are satisfied, they will work with you or the person to draft and then submit a formal complaint. Then your case will get assigned to one of our investigators who acts as a neutral fact finder who will then look at all the details of the case. And so by nature, a thorough investigation does take time. And so that is something that the filers need to keep in mind when they start the process. Once the investigation is completed, the division will tell the person if they think that there is enough evidence for that unlawful discrimination might have occurred. If we find there is no evidence, then the division will dismiss the case. But if we find there is evidence, then we will place the case in a calendar for a public hearing. So often at this point during the public hearing, a complaint will either settle or go through the hearing process. The settlement part, it is much faster. But if we do not go through the settlement process, then the case will advance to a public hearing and ultimately it will go to the commissioner to issue a final decision and order in the case. And so finally, you just want to talk about some of the remedies and penalties. So when the division finds discrimination has occurred, we can order a wide range of remedies and penalties against the lawbreakers. So some of these things that we can order are damages to be paid to the person or the organization who filed the complaint, pay fines to the state. We can make sure that the lawmakers are required to establish or change policies. We can ask them to reverse discriminatory decisions or take civil rights trainings. And last year alone, the division awarded more than $10 million to those who experienced discrimination and then reported it to us. And now with that, this is a really brief overview of what the New York State Division does, how you can get in contact with us and report discrimination with us. But I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Marky, who will then talk a little bit more about the Hate and Bias Prevention Unit within the New York State Division of Human Rights.
Thank you so much, Kelly, and thank you to the Commission for the opportunity to share our work, and thank you all for being here. As mentioned, in addition to our law enforcement role, part of our mandate at the Division of Human Rights is to educate New Yorkers about the protections and the law that the law provides. And our Hate and Bias Prevention Unit is a great example of one of the ways that we engage with communities all throughout the state. So a little bit more on the Hate and Bias Prevention Unit. Our focus is on prevention, on educating, supporting, connecting communities prior to a situation raising to the level of the discrimination, a violation of the human rights law, or even a hate crime. How we do our work is slightly different from the rest of the agency, since our primary focus is on community engagement to prevent hate and bias. In 2022, Governor Hochul directed the division to establish HBPU as part of the state's response to an increase in bias incidents around the state. HBPU is the community resource, a community resource that focuses on bringing people together, sharing information, and helping communities combat prejudice and discrimination. And we do this in 3 different ways. So a little bit more information on our pillars, and I'll elaborate throughout, is we have a statewide network of regional councils. First, our regional councils are a network of 10 regional councils across New York State. And comprised of diverse groups of public and private stakeholders who work together to build connections aimed at preventing and responding to hate and bias incidents within their region. We also have our youth initiatives. Our youth initiatives is focused on engaging our youth in programs and training. We provide workshops that are youth-centered that will develop their leadership skills and help our youth become catalysts for change in their communities. As well as our response team. Our response team offers direct support to people and communities when we hear that there has been a hate and bias incident somewhere in the state. And so, just to level set a little bit, a key part of the service that we provide to communities is our outreach and presentations. And when discussing hate and bias, the topic brings up a lot. It's triggering for different folks. And so one of the main things that we prioritize in our work is defining hate and bias. These terms are used and misused in different spaces. So, we want to make sure as it relates to the context of our work that we're being clear. As well as acknowledging that there's a lot of crossover between these terms. But it is important that we continue to understand the difference, particularly as it relates to the work that we do at HBPU. So I'll start with discrimination, very briefly, as Kelly already highlighted, that is based on protected characteristics, in employment, in housing, and education, and public accommodations, i.e. the scope of the human rights law. For hate crimes, according to New York state law, there must be an underlying crime in order for it to be categorized as a hate crime. Authorities must also determine that a crime was motivated by bias, which can be, very challenging to prove. It's very evidence-based. And again, it follows a legal process similar to the human rights law. And then there's hate and bias incidents. So this is the area where HBPU mostly exists. I like to say, we mainly operate in the gray because we support people and communities through hate and bias incidents that don't always meet the criteria of a hate crime or a discrimination complaint. Though we may support in some incidences that maybe a discrimination complaint or maybe even a hate crime, we are not investigating those. We are not a part of the legal process. And so that's the scope of the different categories, but again, where HBPU sort of exists and how we engage with community. In also defining terms, it's also important to name, if there is not a crime or a violation according to these laws, that doesn't mean that harm has not occurred. That doesn't mean that support is not still needed. And that's really the purpose and intention around creating our unit. And so a little more context on what prevention actually looks like. HBPU engages with community leaders, with advocates, with schools and organizations on the ground doing the work to support before things escalate. And we do that in a series of ways depending on the community need. So we've offered community dialogues and organized forum sessions. These are intentional, structured spaces where folks from communities can come together and share what their experiences have been and feel genuinely heard. We work with regional councils to support events. We utilize different mediums to demonstrate hate and bias prevention work, such as art and films. And HBPU also runs our Call Out Hate public awareness campaign that you might have seen throughout your community. And the overall goal is to bring awareness to the support that the state provides and ensure that, New Yorkers know that they can report incidents of hate and bias and get support. A little bit more context on our regional councils and how they work. I often refer to our regional councils as our eyes and ears to what, again, is happening on the ground. And we have an amazing network of community leaders ranging from nonprofits to educators, our human rights commissions and more that we work closely with to, one, identify community needs, two, facilitate dialogues and create community events, and overall inform our prevention work on a statewide level. I often say we, in this state, and even throughout, we are doing amazing work, but we do a lot of this work in silos. And so, the regional councils really come together to assess what's happening within their community and work closely with DHR to inform our statewide efforts as well. And then our youth initiatives. The youth initiatives is the newest addition to HBPU. It emerged directly from the feedback that we were hearing from communities, uplifting the need to uplift youth voices and, find opportunities to support them through their experiences and center their expertise in how to address hate and bias in their communities. And this work has been immensely valuable and essential to, again, how we do work within each region, but also statewide. Our Youth Initiatives program aims to empower youth and young adults ages 12 to 26 by engaging them in meaningful programming to develop their knowledge, skills, and attitudes needed to lead hate and bias prevention work in their communities. And so why it matters. we are working with young people and getting a better understanding of what hate and bias looks like, again, within their communities. And throughout this work, we heard two things. We need more education and awareness around what hate and bias is and what that looks like. And we also heard that we don't know what to do. We're afraid of making the situation worse. We're afraid that, the harm is going to turn towards us. We don't know how to help. And so this feedback is really what helped us develop our youth initiatives programs. One being our youth hate and bias prevention tools and resources. We also have our presentation program where we are going out to schools, to organizations, and providing, best practice tools and language around what hate and bias is, so that we're constantly building that awareness. And then our youth council. Our youth council is a combination of amazing statewide youth leaders from across the state that are engaged in educational workshops with us. They are, providing insight for our regional councils and, again, our work statewide to ensure that youth voices and expertise is at the center of how we are doing this work across the state. And then there's also, the overall focus of constant early skills development, right? Understanding that this is a constant practice and there's a need to continue to learn and build out these skills. The long-term prevention impact, so early awareness and, again, training, strengthening communities, understanding that youth are change agents, right? So how can we continue to, again, center their voices and expertise in our work? And we cannot do any of this work alone. So our schools and youth networks are continuing to grow and inform how we work together. So that is the very top level scope of youth initiatives. And I'll shift to our last pillar, which is our response work. So we encourage anyone who witnesses or experiences hate and bias to tell us about what is happening. This is separate from our formal discrimination reporting process. Not every incident of hate and bias is necessarily a violation of the law. And some folks may not feel comfortable reporting information to police or participating in an enforcement process. So anyone can call our incident, can call in and report an incident by calling 844-NO-TO-HATE or submitting a report online at dhr.ny.gov/no-hate. And we'll drop those in the chat and also share those resources in a little bit for how you can stay connected. So a little bit more context around what happens when we report. So we provide a victim-centered, trauma-informed approach from the first contact. So callers are being connected with a live person, a live trained victim-centered, trauma-informed expert to gather information and figure out what is the best way to support. We have multilingual interpretation available, and the services really range from providing referrals to law enforcement or other government agencies. We've worked with DCJS, ONA, the Office of New Americans, Office of Victim Services, and legal services and community services as well. So we have a network of resources that we can connect folks to based off of need. And the person reporting may also be looking for something else in addition to the various resources or a referral. We may also provide community-focused responses such as conflict resolution, community dialogues, restorative justice, and collaborate with our regional councils on community events. Anonymous documentation is is also what we are gathering when folks are calling so that we can continue to build awareness and inform policy. So that is a very, again, top level overview of the work that we do as it relates to HBPU. And I will pass it to Kelly to close us out.
Great. Thank you so much, Marky. So I know we talked a bit about the initiatives and the improvements of the division and how they have been made possible by the governor's support and also investments by the government last year. But now in her State of the State agenda for this upcoming year and also her budget proposal, the governor continues to lay out an ambitious agenda to improve the lives of all New Yorkers. So this includes investing billions of dollars to advance statewide universal childcare. Also unleashing a wave of building and growth by speeding up construction of affordable housing, keeping New Yorkers safe through proven gun violence prevention efforts, and proposing legislation to lower skyrocketing auto insurance rates. It also includes legislation that prevents the kinds of destructive tactics that we are seeing from ICE agents. So the governor has made it very clear that New York will not look the other way. And so that's why she is proposing legislation in her budget that would do different things. One, prevent federal immigration authorities from deputizing state or local police to carry out federal civil immigration enforcement actions. Also, prevent federal agents from using local detention centers to conduct activities like mass immigration raids, like we have seen elsewhere in the country. And then finally, protect sensitive locations like schools, hospitals, and houses of worship from warrantless civil immigration enforcement. I also want to quickly underscore some of the governor's investments across the state, especially in the Mid-Hudson region, since I know many of you are joining from the Mid-Hudson region. So in the governor's budget, it includes $4.1 billion in school aid, $115 million for childcare, nearly $30 million to keep the region's state parks beautiful, close to $60 million in healthcare projects to build new facilities and to help communities access the services they need, and also millions more to support healthcare and peer-to-peer services for veterans who call this region home. And this is just really the tip of the iceberg. Governor Hochul has ensured her budget for the upcoming year is really a true reflection of her commitment to delivering for every community across New York State. And so now I know you heard a lot about the affordability initiatives in the budget, and you're maybe thinking, what does this have to do with human rights? But for us, affordability and fundamental rights are really deeply interconnected. Affordability often shapes access to opportunity. So things like childcare costs, transit costs, housing costs, and just everyday costs, they do stack up, and we know that. And that can limit who is able to live, who is able to work and succeed in New York State. So when we talk about making New York more affordable, we're really talking about creating fair access to our state's opportunities. So we are talking about making sure that the benefits of living in this state are not just reserved for a few, but they're accessible to all individuals and families, regardless of who they are, what color their skin is, who they love, where they're from, or what is their background. And so with that, before opening it up to questions, I just want to close by emphasizing that our work together is vital in eliminating discrimination, hate, and bias from our communities. And we do hope that we continue to build partnerships with each of you that are here today. If you want to stay connected with us, with the division, you want to engage us on social media or go to our website to learn more about how New York State human rights law protects you, and also to contact us, you can utilize information that is in this page to stay in touch with us. Again, I want to thank you all so much. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Peyton, who's going to open the floor to any questions about the division, any process you may have questions about. So please use the chat feature to ask your questions.
Thanks, Kelly. Hi, everyone. My name is Peyton Clavery. I am the Downstate Outreach Specialist over here at DHR. Thank you for attending and submitting some questions. And with that, I will get to the first one. This one is for you, Marky. Do you offer training for campus bias response teams?
Yes, we have done a good amount of work with our SUNY and CUNY communities where we offer a more in-depth overview of the work that we're doing as a unit, again, defining terms and also providing some conflict resolution best practices, what our youth and youth support staff can do to address hate and bias when and if it shows up. So I would say if you are interested in receiving a training or a presentation, reach out via email. And I believe we dropped that in the chat, and we can connect from there.
Okay, great. Thank you. Looks like there are no other questions, but I will give it a moment to see if anyone has any before we close out.
I do want to say, Peyton, that if you get any questions from constituents that have submitted cases to the division, you can always reach out to us at info@dhr.ny.gov, and we're more than happy to provide case status or reach out to constituents as well if they have any questions. And I'll put in the chat, I'll put the email where you can reach us as well.
Okay, perfect. Let's see if there's any more questions before we close out. Okay. Let's see. Sorry, we're getting one more. Okay, let's see. We have one. There are some cases that might have taken a while to get through intake. Is there any update on when that backlog, how that process is going, and any update on any of the time it takes to do those cases?
Yeah, sure. So currently we are still working through the backlog as you know, and as I mentioned earlier, it is a lengthy process. So with our new intake system and our new intake unit, we are working to getting through those as fast as possible. Again, some of the investments we've made is that we are hiring new new staff, new investigators, so that we can ramp up in the timeline as well. So, but as of now, if you have submitted a case, it takes about 90 days to hear back from us in case you do need any further information, or we will give you a case status update. Again, if it's been past those 90 days, you can send an email to us at info@dhr.ny.gov, and we'll be able to get back to you on your case and where the status is of that case.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have a question from Stephanie, who's the chair of the City Binghamton Human Rights Commission. What are some opportunities for collaboration with the local HRCs in 2026?
Amazing. And hi, Stephanie. It's nice to see you here today. So as part of the external affairs team, and also with hate and bias prevention, we are offering a slew of presentations. So some of the presentations that we have, similar to this one, is the DHR 101 presentation. We can do that. We also have a Know Your Obligations presentation, and that is targeted to realtors, brokers, agents, landlords, who just for them to understand what their human rights law covers, so that they are able to uphold those human rights laws, and also minimize discrimination practices. With human rights commissions in 2026, we are also looking to partner up during big events like Pride, State Fair. So if your commission is within that region, please send an email to us. We look forward to being part of the community. HPU also is part of the community that has regional councils there, and some of the regional council members are part of the commissions. So we can always collaborate with that. We can also do tabling events, have speakers there. And then I don't know, Marky, is there anything else you want to add from the HPU side on how we can collaborate in person?
Yes, thanks, Kelly, for highlighting that. We do have a great amount of representation of from our local human rights commissions on all of our regional councils throughout the state. And so there's already been work to create events and uplift the impactful work that's already being done within each region with support from DHR. I think that's a key way that we'll continue to collaborate and spread awareness around the work that's being done locally and statewide.
Okay, great. We have two more questions. Are there any trainings planned in the various agencies to include how to avoid discrimination and retaliation.
Yeah, so any trainings, we don't really do trainings, we do presentations, as I said. We are currently working on updating our presentation outreach page on our website. We will have a new outreach menu where you'll be able to see what we are offering. But if you do need a specific or a targeted presentation, again, you can send us an email and we'll be more than happy to set up a presentation that meets your needs.
Okay, great. It looks like we have no more questions in the chat. So I will pass it back to Anna to close us out, unless Kelly or Marky, you have anything else you would like to add before we do.
No, just thank you again for the opportunity to share about our work. And I look forward, I see some familiar names that are from our regional council. And so it's great that, you were able to attend, and we'll continue to work together and uplift the impactful work that we're all doing throughout the state. So thank you.
Yeah, and echoing Marky, I also do kind of see a question about Fair Housing Conference in April. So yes, we do host a Fair Housing Conference in April. It is slated for April 27th. If you haven't gotten an invitation, please send us an email. We'll be happy to send you the link for that. But it's coming up, and it will also be taking place in the Bronx. So happy to share more information about that. But again, thank you all so much for joining us today. And I think I'm going to pass it back to Anna to close us out.
Anna, you're muted.
I'm sorry, I'm in a public place and I was muted myself to protect all of you. So thank you to all of you again and for joining us today. Our last event in this series will be in person in 1 week from today. On Wednesday, March 25th, it will be an evening event and doors open at 5:30 and it begins at 6 o'clock. The title is Eleanor Roosevelt's Legacy in Action, Protecting Human Rights in New York State. This in-person event will be held at the Family Partnership Center in Poughkeepsie, where it will be joined by the New York State Division of Human Rights Commissioner Denise Miranda in conversation with myself and the Executive Director of the Dutchess County Commission on Human Rights, Jody Miller. Registration can be found at ervk.org. We hope you can join us then next week. Thank you again to everybody. Bye-bye.